How about a little surprise? The Wild Turkey Surprise, an extra edition of Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason talking about Courtland Sutton showing up to mandatory minicamp or not next week, Mace.
I think he is. But Sean Payton doesn't know.
He kind of left it open, didn't he?
The suspense is building. Look,
Yes,
it's not a holdout until you're not there for mandatory minicamp. It's not a holdout today. So, we don't see, like Levi Wallace out there. We don't see him, right?
Sure.
Brandon Jones not getting much work. So it's other guys like JL Skinner, picking up the slack. But with Courtland Sutton, it's been very clear. It's about his contract, about the guaranteed money specifically in the contract, the guaranteed money that's left, the guarantee on the box, as they'd say in Tommy Boy. And, we just did a show earlier today talking about things that we like, such as, when we see Bo Nix throwing to Blake Watson or Devon Vele or Troy Franklin or Lucas Kroll. We see Brandon Johnson making some plays today.
Oh, yeah.
We see Lil Jordan Humphrey, Lil Jordan coming up big, making plays on a regular basis. Josh Rutledge getting involved today. The train is rolling down the track here. And at this moment, Courtland Sutton's not on it. Now, sounds like they're going to make room to stop and bring him aboard. But if you really want to find out what these young guys have, I mean, they've had an opportunity the last few weeks, and I think we've seen, at least in the 3 practices we've observed, some positive things from those guys.
Very much so. They're taking advantage of it. I want to play the Payton clip, the big one on Sutton, because again,
Okay.
Mace, he doesn't say like for sure he's going to be here. He kind of leaves it open, although we both think he's going to be there. Here's what Coach had to say.
Yeah, I think he'll be here for minicamp. I mean, it's mandatory, and when I've been asked about Courtland, I'm going to say this, man, I just know his work ethic. I know the player, and there's a list of things that race through your mind this time in the offseason as a head coach. And respectfully when I say this to him, because he and I have talked, I think that'll work itself out. So I think he'll be here, yeah. But I don't know that for sure.
I think he'll be here, but I don't know that for sure.
And what did he mean by, we've talked and I think all that'll work out? Does that mean Sutton's going to get a deal?
Or that it's just posturing, he's going to come back without a deal, that he's not going to like the notion of being fined, and he's going to come back on the current terms of his deal. You and I discussed it last week. In terms of average per year, I don't think that what he's asking for is necessarily an unfair ask, because it does keep him in that same range of right around receiver 20 to 22 in terms of average annual value, which I think reflects that. I mean, I had a very spirited discussion with Dan Jacobs on 104.3 The Fan last Sunday, where he tried to argue that Courtland Sutton hasn't lived up to the contract. I think he hasn't exceeded the value of the contract, but I think in where that contract is settled now, a couple of years in, I think it's proving to be pretty fair for both sides. And that's what part of why my first instinct upon hearing that Courtland Sutton was not taking part, because he wants a new deal. I'm like, well, okay, fine. I personally don't think that a huge raise is something that is necessarily warranted here based on the production to date.
Yeah. But how has he not been a number 1 wide receiver? I wasn't on with you with Dan. I think I was on after you that day, but
yeah,
my retort to Dan would be like, how has he not been a number 1 receiver for this team? Is he a number 1 receiver for Minnesota or Houston or whatever? No, but for this team, those 10 touchdowns, how has he not been the number 1 receiver?
Yeah. It's just relative to players around the league, I think is what he's saying. Yeah.
Right.
But
is this passing game the same as everyone else's passing game? No.
With the same quarterback. Now, that being said, DJ Moore is an example of a receiver who can have productivity without having great quarterback play. He's done it in Carolina. He's done it in Chicago. So, that's a lesson I learned a long time ago. 1989, Mark Carrier, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, great season. Vinny Testaverde throwing him the ball at that point, not a great quarterback. Vinny eventually became a pretty good quarterback. Took him a while. He kept getting shots because he had a howitzer of an arm. Eventually, he figured it out and came within a game of the Super Bowl back in the 1998 season. But at that moment, Vinny wasn't good. It didn't stop Mark Carrier from having a Pro Bowl season in 89 or Bruce Hill from having a 1,000-yard season the year before when Vinny set a interception record that still stands for a single season. So it's one of those things. Sometimes you learn a lesson when you're young. That's one of the lessons I learned, that you don't necessarily have to have a top-level quarterback to be a productive wide receiver if you're good enough.
Right.
And so that's where you say, okay, I mean, what's been the disconnect? Courtland Sutton has, had some big plays, but it hasn't translated to even more than 1,000-yard season. And now we look back on that 1,000-yard season, 2019. His most productive portion of the season was with Joe Flacco throwing him passes. So Joe Flacco was kind of the perfect quarterback for him. Deep ball, 9-ball, take a shot.
Yeah. But I want to see Bo Nix be able to take that shot. Like Bo Nix has been okay. He's been good, not great in practice, whether it's the third team or the first team, mostly with the first team in the practice we've seen. How would he look with Court? How would Jarrett Stidham? Jarrett Stidham's been the most steady. Would Jarrett Stidham look outstanding with Court? Chances are maybe.
Well, chances are maybe. The early returns one game weren't promising back in week 18 in Las Vegas.
They did not mesh. They did not look like
no.
They meshed.
And that was that's kind of a concern I've had was it just it's their first game together, they're not on the same page, because they were getting snaps together in practice. Like, why was the timing so off? Is it that Courtland Sutton and his skill set doesn't fit what Sean Payton wants his offense to be? Now, you'd say, okay, if it's emphasizing jump ball, 9-ball, no, that's not a fit. But can Courtland Sutton, a big receiver, and Sean Payton has talked about how he likes big receivers, and you look around, Devon Vele is big. Little Jordan Humphrey, nothing little about him, as we like to say. He's big. Josh Reynolds is big. Even somebody like Troy Franklin, he's not big in terms of weight, but he's tall, right? He's got length to him. So there's a template physically, and I didn't even mention Tim Patrick. There's a template physically that Courtland Sutton fits. And it is the Michael Thomas, Marcus Colston type of template coming from New Orleans. But the question is, does his skill set fit? Does he run those slant routes effectively enough? I'd say we don't know the answer yet because we haven't really seen Courtland Sutton operate for more than a single game in what the Sean Payton offense is supposed to look like.
And shouldn't he be energized by that, right? He studied Michael Thomas. Now you get to play Michael Thomas because it's actually the offense. It's not just throwing. We know we can get 9 balls. We know he can get jump balls in the end zone. I already know that. Yeah. I want to see him be a slant god. He probably wants that too. He wants a couple million, right? And I'm not saying he'll ever get Justin Jefferson money, but look at what receivers are getting paid. Sean Payton will help get you there.
It's the ones that can move the chains. They have the dynamic element down the field as well, but they can keep you on schedule as an offense. Consistency. That's another thing. You want consistency. Courtland Sutton's production last year, and again, his best season since 2019, when he went to the Pro Bowl and had the 1,000-yard season with Joe Flacco giving him the ball for half the season. But last year, Courtland Sutton's production, you look and you see some stretches where it's great, and you see some stretches not so much. The thing is, though, Cecil, like you look at the yardage, right? And actually, you know what? This is the whole thing of thinking out loud first draft.
Week 11 through week 15. That's consistent.
Yeah. 61, 77, 62, 71.
And
in 4
66
games
before the week before that against Minnesota.
Yeah, in game 10. Yeah, and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you do that again?
Shut my mouth.
You know?
See, I thought my thought was, what I was thinking about, there was a 3-game stretch where he had 27 yards, 13 yards, 46 yards, then 76, then only 29. So yeah, you had that 5-game stretch in October into no, it was all in October, 5 games in October. 5-game stretch in October where he had 86 plus 76, so that's 150, 162 plus 29. 5-game stretch, 191 yards. That's not good.
Right.
It's not even 40 yards a game.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, coming out of the bye, 53, 66, 61, 77, 62, 71, and then finally the stink burger in week 18.
Right. And we could say, the Buffalo game, because I'm looking at his targets now. So we started in week 10 last year, 11 targets. But then it was 5, 6, 7, 4, 6.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need 11 targets. But you know what? I don't mind the idea of him getting double-digit targets in a game.
I don't mind either, but the routes have to look a little bit different, do they not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other thing is also, we see that he doesn't need to get separation to make a play. That's one of his gifts. Does Bo Nix trust him enough to throw those tight windows, right? Or does Bo Nix trust his own arm enough to throw those tight windows? I think that's a question too. It's not just whether the receiver can get it, it's whether the quarterback has enough velocity to get there. I'll say this for Nix in the practice this week. Wasn't, there were some misses, but I thought he put a lot of zip on the ball, even though you were dealing with winds and going against the wind. The conditions were very capricious out there on Tuesday. I thought he had some zip on some downfield throws into the wind, a little more than I was expecting.
Yes, and I thought that was good to see from Bo Nix. Also, he doesn't shy away from a tough throw, Mace, but we did see him throw one away.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, he's not going to force it. With Sutton, does he need to learn, okay, don't force it, but remember, there's that window called the sky. Let Sutton win that window.
Yeah.
Let him go get it.
If you'd done that today, if you toss it too far in the sky, the wind would have
taken it. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been. It wasn't quite like that 2010 practice. I don't know if you remember it. Josh McDaniels' second year, and the wind was ridiculous. And I think Britton Colquitt tried to punt that day that kind of went sideways, and it was it's a mess.
Yeah. What are we doing? Am
I the only one who remembers this stupid stuff sometimes?
You might be.
Am I the only one? Like 5 years from now, I'm going to be the only one recalling the Zach Wilson OTA interception, PJ Locke making it, and asking myself, what on earth is this?
What is happening? We've seen this before. Payton did say,
I think I said, "Oh no," when it happened.
Oh no.
Yes.
Yeah, I've done that. There's no cheering in the press box, but I'll tell you on the sidelines what I think of a play. Sitting there over there doing this next to Steve Atwater when it was interference on that Mims play. I'm like, that's a flag. That's a flag.
What did Steve think? He's a defensive back. Like
he's the one that started it because Damari started celebrating.
Whoa. Okay. So like
Steve pointed out.
So Damari, who by the way is wearing Steve's number,
right,
27. I know it would drive us crazy during training camp, but I'm in favor of retiring a few more numbers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or at least kind of retiring him without retiring him, like 24.
24 is basically retired. 88's basically retired right now.
Yeah, 27 would be fine if you didn't have someone wearing it. Nothing against Damari, but
I digress. Yeah.
Anyway. Do you want my surprise, Mace?
Yes.
I liked what Josh Reynolds did today.
I did too.
I liked what Josh Reynolds is catching it away from his body. He's not body catching it. He's plucking it out of the air. If it's contested, he's ripping it to his body. He's
Yep.
securing the ball after the catch. He's looking really good. Really good.
He's looking really crisp.
Yes.
He is okay. I'll say this. He is looking the way that Tim Patrick looked when he was healthy.
He's looking the way Sutton should look if he was here.
Yeah. And this is the whole thing of Courtland Sutton not being around, because I got to tell you, I can close my eyes and think of a 3-wide set that involves Josh Reynolds and Marvin Mims Jr. and Troy Franklin or Devon Vele. Even Lil Jordan Humphrey keeps making plays.
Sure.
And I can get really excited about that. Now, the question is, who's the alpha of that group? I think Mims has some alpha potential.
Oh, yeah. It's quiet, but it's there. It's fierce.
Yeah, it is there. It is. But I like the balance there, and I like Lucas Kroll, especially because he'll get in there and block. He doesn't have to strictly operate in space. By the way, Kroll, did you see he was at the center of a little
fracas
disagreement today?
Who was on the other side? Because Miners was breaking it up, or getting in there too. Who's he
Quinn
against?
I couldn't see who it was against, but Quinn was playing peacemaker. He was like kind of dragging Kroll away, which doesn't surprise me. Like, Quinn Miners is really one of the most interesting personalities on the team, because he's got that nasty streak to him, yet he gets away from like the being nasty during the play, and he is, if he's not the most level-headed guy in that locker room, he's in the top 3 or 4. Like, he's got, I don't know if it's all that time he would spend out in the woods,
Isolation,
but
snapping a trash can.
He seems to have a real mental piece about him that eludes some dudes in sports.
Yeah, no, it's nice to see,
and keeps his wits really, and largely keeps his wits really well. Like he's good at, and also he's good at biting his tongue, because man, after the Detroit game last year, he wanted to go off on the penalty at the goal line there, and he just I can't. You could tell he wanted to say something, and he knew, like, I can't. I don't want to get fined, but he let discretion be the better part of valor. He's a good dude.
Well, I'll say this, anyway, and I say it gently, Mace, because he's one of my buddies. He's not going to Dalton Reisner it. And I love Dalton. Like, I love him. I think he's a great man. But we saw what happened. And I'm glad Minnesota re-upped with him. So that just, happened last week, whatever.
Dalton Reisnering it. Do you think that's part of why he sat on the shelf in free agency last year?
I believe so, yes. The only thing that makes sense.
One fan shooting a video sitting in the field level suites behind the Bronco bench, and that guy, he posted it, and he did an @ mention of me on Twitter. And so, of course, I saw that, and I pumped it out to the world.
It happens.
But the thing is it my fault? Not really. No, I mean,
you're not the one that did
it. It would have gotten out there in the end anyway. That's the way I think to myself, like, okay, it would have gotten out there anyway.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I guess amplified it, and I appreciate I appreciate that. I appreciate him for sending it to me, and bringing it to my attention. But yeah, not only did it affect Dalton Reisner, I think that was the moment where Greg Penner decided enough.
Right.
This guy's lost control of the team.
Yep.
This is an embarrassment. I mean, I can imagine him. I can imagine Greg Penner sitting, probably, whether it's at a holiday dinner that night or flying back after that game, just be like, "Oh my God, Oh my God.
Mhm.
What's going
I
on?
know what I have to do.
I know what I have to do. I can't watch this anymore. So
It's a Star Wars quote I'm trying to think of. I know what has to be done. Like, okay,
yes.
that's right. Mace, that's a wrap for today's wide receiver show. We got more good stuff coming for you, but we need your help on YouTube. Almost to 12,000 subscribers. So how can you help us out?
Like,
Comment,
share,
subscribe,
and hit that notification bell.
so that you never miss a vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's a BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.